It may take a second to load because there's a couple of things. I have updated it. We've had a little bit of a quick move forward with some of our work that we've done. So if anyone who's on cam can just give me a quick thumbs up if you can see that, that'd be fantastic. Real good. Okay. Yay, that's good. So very brief introduction. This is our worker place. We're doing worker placement games as a learning resource, and where we started with this is in policing, and specifically a module for level 5 and level 6 students in decision making and leadership. Bit about me. My name is Rich Hinds. I'm from University of Chester as a senior learning tech. Been doing that job for roughly coming up to 2 years now. Been a standard learning tech for another 5 before that. I have been assured that it's not a senior position because I'm getting close to 40, but I'm not sure. But if you ever want to get in touch with me after this, this is everywhere you can get. So these my email and Twitter and everything if you want to get in touch. So the project we're talking about today is game-based learning within policing and decision-making and leadership now. This is a really interesting thing because everyone in this room, or the majority of the people I say in this room, and where I spoke about this before, when we all tend to come together, the majority of the people that I speak to are already inherently gamers or play tabletop games, video games, board games of any kind. However, in my world at the moment, apart from some people that I work with, I am the one that's the gamer, and everybody else kind of looks at me with a little bit of bafflement when I say we can bring the mechanics and the world building and the logic from these things into the classroom to create a resource that is both useful for the students and also useful for the lecturers in terms of something that can be deployed and used multiple times and has genuine value in the classroom. Quite a lot of people that I speak to lecturers wise, when I say, oh, we've been doing game-based learning, they instantly think of Monopoly, or we're doing snakes and ladders. And occasionally I have seen in the classroom where people have deployed a very odd version of snakes and ladders, which just has weird questions around the subject. So what I've been looking at is looking at my games collection and games as a whole as through a gamification lens and from an education standpoint, and seeing if we can reverse engineer some of the things that we generally play for pleasure and go, actually, there's something in here that mimics mechanics and logic within placements and experiential learning and things like that. So when I first started this, I initially had a meeting with the whole of the policing department, was showing them different technology that we had and brought up this game-based learning and what we could go forward with it. All the police that we spoke to were not gamers. So the initial discussions that I had was to get non-gaming people to think like gamers and to think of their content through a gamification lens. So everybody that I spoke to, we first went through some really basic things. Is A, what are the learning outcomes of the module or the particular bit of content that you're looking to gamify? In this case, it was a particular element of the policing module revolving around leadership and management of a sporting event. This is at our Warrington campus. Our Warrington campus is close to Warrington Wolves, so we have good ties with those. And it's all about how to train up-and-coming police officers to manage and work in a sports event setting and police the crowd and things that are happening there as well. We mainly go through what their students do now and where they're trying to hit on Bloom's taxonomy, which is always the first point of call I go to. What are we looking to do and how complex are we being? Bloom's is a really easy one to refer to. It's probably teaching most of you to suck eggs at this point, but if you look at Bloom's as a gamification sort of taxonomy rather than for education, it's quite easy. Everything down the bottom is you're thinking of it, so the lower end of it is just quiz shows and trivial pursuit and things like that. You move a little bit further up, and if anyone's familiar with Linky, where you have linked questions that have an overall theme and you're trying to guess the theme and things like that, you're moving slightly up the pyramid there as well. And you can sit, and if you have a good sort of 10 to 15 minutes, I really advise you to go have a look at your games collection and try and sort of put them into groups. That I would say that's something that's higher up the Bloom's taxonomy or lower and things like that, because it really does change your opinion of what games are and how you approach them. and especially when you're trying to marry that up with things in the classroom as well. And then the next thing that we do from that is then we start moving towards the gamification. We spoke to the lecturer and said, right, you're trying to do X, Y, and Z. What do they do currently? What kind of levels are we hitting with that? And then we look at it through this, which is the gamification taxonomy, which I will link to the paper in the next slide. Fantastic paper. A team have gone through practically everywhere where there's gamification tax and sort of terminology, brought it all together under this particular wheel. I've changed it ever so slightly into this table with a link to the paper on this slide, but I think the table kind of breaks it down a little bit better, and the paper also goes into what they consider, but it's not limited to, but what they consider fits into each element. So we're all quite familiar with some of these. So performance, where you level up, you gain points, victory points in a game, you have stats and things like that. A game where there's an economy and things like that. Now, economy is quite broad. I imagine most people think of economy in terms of a currency or something that can be used in the game. We use it slightly different in the policing one. I'll show you in a moment how we do that. And then we have other things as well. So narrative and storytelling, which for me, any project where it's placement and experiential, the narrative and storytelling is the production of a report or a case or something similar at the back end or a portfolio to show they've understood going through this. And we do that here in the decision making and leadership, where their narrative that they write up is their match report of the fictionalized sporting event that they've just policed. I would definitely recommend reading this paper. The link is there. If it doesn't work or anything, I will drop the link in the chat in a bit, but it's a fantastic one, and it's really good also as well, where I said before, looking at your games collection through Bloom's, if you look at things you do day to day and in your classroom, and I even say like just your day to day going around, like going to the supermarket, what would you say that was? I pitched this to someone and I described a gamification of a situation, which was, in this case, if they go to the supermarket, you've got economy and imposed choice. There's time pressure because you want to get out there as soon as possible. You have a social pressure, in my case, so I don't forget everything that my missus has asked me for. But you can look at things in everyday life and apply these rules to them and think about how they could be used, the mechanics of board games, to understand them in a classroom setting, and slicing the two together is really good. So we go to this next slide in a second. This is what my lecturer I spoke to roughly described the act that they wanted to do. So they have students that need to learn how to work as a team to police crowd control at a sporting event, and they need to learn how to deploy officers from a small amount of officers and discuss and write up their decisions that they make. Now, this is quite a common in a placement thing. You've got to think about how to work as a team. You've got to think how to use your resources right. And you've got to write up everything at the end and state your reasoning as well. So when we look at that through the gamification lens, we have a cooperative worker placement game with economic constraints around the amount of police officers you have and the amount of time that you have. There's a time pressure to it, which is the length of the game. How you're doing within the game is measured through stats. We have a control a stat, and then they create a narrative to show why they made their decisions during the game in the form of the match report. And there's a social pressure to the situation, because even though you work as a team, one of your team is nominated as the match commander, and they have the final say on the decisions, and they report back to the lecturer, who in this situation acts as the gold commander. So everyone reports back to the lecturer. So it ticks a lot of boxes. You'll be able to generate a situation in which students have to make decisions within time frame. So we actually have a timer set up in the classroom to do this. And they have to make their decisions, deploy the police or not, depending on how they're feeling, use what they've got, rationalize their decisions to the lecturer, and monitor the control level of the situation. So here it is where we tick all the boxes across these. I'm also going to say at this point, if you are interested in reading this paper, which I 100% recommend you do, don't feel that you have to tick as many boxes as this. It just happened that to tick what the lecturer wanted and for us to hit the learning outcomes they wanted out of the session, we did hit quite a lot. We do have versions of this game where we ramp up the difficulty depending on how early on the students are. So, for example, the time pressure element at first we don't include because we want the students to discuss and talk to you and have a back and forth with each other and yourself as a lecturer about what to do. And then the time pressure element is added at a later stage so that you can actually go, right, this is actually what it would be like. You can't just stand around and talk for 20 minutes. You have to make a decision on the spot. Things as well like the economic element of how many police to deploy. We did 2 sets of event cards for this game, one with the policing amount you needed and one without. So one would be just discuss and say what you would do in the situation, and then the other set would have the amount of police you would have to deploy and the positive and negative connotations of matching that or not matching that as well. And here we have a little bit of a closer look of how we match all of these. So the social elements, there's cooperative element working as a team, but the social pressure as well as someone actually leading that team. So they have to sit and discuss and evaluate what's going on. The match commander has the final say, breaks any tiebreakers. They're the one that reports back to the lecturer. When it comes to the ecological element, the economy side of it is how many police officers you have. Now, that is your currency in the game. You are given a set amount of police officer meeples, which are on my desk here, which are the wonder of 3D printing. We have a set amount, which the lecturer can either set. Let me see if I can get on there. Little meeples that we printed. The lecturer can set beforehand, or the next set of cards that we're designing actually say how many you have of each, and we'll discuss that later because that's one of the design iterations that we've changed. So this is the currency of the game when we have that as well, is that the students have so many they're given, and when we first tested it, they got 10 police officers to police the game. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the area, but I was quite shocked about how many or how little police officers that are actually at these events, especially at the lower level events and smaller clubs. That saying 10 sometimes would be considered quite a lot. So the lecturer can change this according to how they want the simulation to go. And we also have on this one as well the time pressure. We worked out what would be the best time. So the students, we set up a timer on a phone or an iPad or whatever you've got. It's one of the regular gym timers you can get for free on your phone, where you have you can set how many intervals you have and a break in between. So we had it set to 3 minutes for each decision, and then a 15-second countdown in between for them to pull the next card and read it and then start talking about the next part. Because this is based around rugby, they have 4 events in the first half and 4 events in the second half. One full simulation of this roughly lasts about 28 minutes. That includes all the time, the breaks in between, and the setup as well. Performance level, so I will show you the board in a moment so you can get a better idea of this, but the control level down the side is from 10, meaning you consider yourself absolutely on it and you are complete control of the match. 0 at the bottom is that you've lost control of everything here. This has roughly changed actually since we tested it both with staff and students. Originally it was quite a hard rule that it would go up and down. Now at half time, the lecturer and the team who are playing discuss how they feel their control of the situation is, and they can discuss and between the lecturer and the students decide where out of 10 they feel that their level of control of the match and the situation is, which is very interesting. And then at the end, creating a match report as a document to show how they have done and justified their decisions as a written article. The next bit I'm going to talk about doesn't apply to everything that you can design, but it does for some elements. And it's to, if you're thinking of doing something where you have this, is to have static and dynamic elements within the game. In this case, for us, the stadium is static. We have a board made up, which is Warrington Wolves Stadium. There is set elements that are always the same regardless. You could play this a million times and that part of it would remain the same every time. And then we have the dynamic changing elements, which is the amount of officers and the events that happen for the actual match. And it also includes things like who they're playing, the type of match they're playing as well. And we're including for the next iterations the match report for what the gate is, so they know how many people are in the stadium at that time, and also how many people are roughly approximately in each of the stands. So they have the north, south, east, and west stand, and where the away fans are and where the home fans are. So you can make your decisions not only based on the events that come out, but if you know that you've got a particularly high number of away fans next to a high level of home fans, and you know there's a bit of a rivalry, it gives them more information for them to play with. So talking about the theory of it all and how we set it, let's get into the design process, because this is where you can kind of really see what it looks like and how we came to get something in front of the students and the staff. My first thought with this, and this is how I've changed everything I've designed since this, since I've done this project, I think I'm about 6 different game-based learning projects deep after this, and I've done some before, but since this has been almost a tipping point into more and more around the university that we're doing, is that I keep it agile and I keep it very small steps. And even if, for example, in this case, this particular project isn't going to be deployed fully for the students until September this year, we met weekly for a very short meeting, about 30 minutes. We would be sending stuff back and forth, but we would take tiny little bits. I need this from you, I will provide this, and it would move a project along and mean that we could iterate really, really fast and really, really quickly. The reason being is that in other projects that we've done where, let's say, for example, there's a 3 months time before the project's deployed in the classroom, I've had it where it's considered the best practice that we talk about it in January, everything goes dark, and then when it comes to March, I provide something, and then we have to have an exceptionally fast iterative process to get it to actually where the lecturer thought it would be, or where I've missed the point, or vice versa, and things like that. So this means that we can change things very, very fast, and the software that we use means that we can update things super fast as well. The other thing as well, if you're looking to do this and if you're designing something and you're working with another lecturer or within a department or a head or someone, the quicker you can get to having a mock-up of something and put it in their hands or in front of a table, I found that is where interest rockets. A lot of the time, people are really happy to talk about game-based learning and the ideas, but not everyone really is on the same page. When you get a version in front of them, or as I have done often is what we discussed it. So as a completely different area, I've been working with education, and where they teach a module on special needs education and what they are teaching students to do in the classroom. So we've designed a case study generator where it simulates starting a class, events happening throughout the class, what they need to do, what class sizes they have, if there are any students with special educational needs in the classroom and what they are. They're all randomized, and then the students work their way through this fictionalized class and make their choices. Now, me and the lecturer talked about this for quite a while, but I could still sense a bit of hesitation. They wanted to move forward because they liked the idea of it. So I designed all the cards and drew loads of them at random, and in Photoshop mocked up and said, right, that's what it would look like on the table in front of the student. And instantly they went from being, oh, this is kind of neat, to, yes, we need this in the classroom. So it's really good how that moves. And the ability to generate a mock-up is always good, especially if you're trying to convince someone that it is worthy for the classroom as well. This one as well, keep it simple. Start with, I would always say with any project, and the policing one, for example, before we started designing a board and all these different rules and everything, what I did is we talked about, right, there are events that are going to happen with the students and they have to make their choices. So if you can give me a list of 25 events that happen in the stadium, not outside the stadium, not with the control room with the CCTV, just 25 events that may happen on the pitch or in the stands. Started there, and everything grew from that element. And it also meant as well, because we kept it like that, we could take it back to that basic level and just use a card-based game of this has happened, what do you do, prompt a discussion in the classroom, and then add more to the cards which influence the board game, keep moving from there. Making it modular is a big thing that I say as well. I'm currently working on a project with social work where we do a very kind of similar thing where it's simulating home visits. And the way that I've designed the deck of cards is that we have sets of cards that are about personal issues, sets of cards about residential issues, case notes, a set of cards which are about reflection as you as a social worker. But what we also do is talk about sets of cards which are specific or niche subjects within social work that can be added and removed from the deck. So that you can expand upon what the students are doing by adding on and bolting on additional ones, kind of like buying booster packs for games. You just add and add to the deck and you can remove them. They are actually marked in the corner, kind of like when you're separating cards in a game that you know these are the core cards and these are the additional. You can shuffle them out very quickly. Whilst I'm not I think this game has lived and died a death now, but I kind of liken it to Cards Against Humanity in that you could buy all the booster packs of different topics, the film pack, the movie pack, the TV pack, and all that. That's what we're trying to do, is to modularize it so that you can have lecturers start with a very core concept at the beginning of a module. And then if it's rolled out, maybe every other seminar session, you can add and add and add as the topic gets more and more complicated. The other thing here as well is keep your language on your cards as simple as possible. We always refer to Steve here. I mean, it is apt because of his career, but him and our friend Bledin, we refer to them as the rules lawyers, because if they can't understand it, none of us can. So I always, when I design my cards, is talk to people, not just the lecturers, but I give demos to my friends and go, right, does that make sense? Does this read right? I give them to my colleagues and go, what if I give you that card, what information does that card give you? What do you think it says? And I give this to both gaming colleagues and non-gaming colleagues and go, if we were playing a game and that card was in front of you, what do you think it says to you? Which is really key. And the other option, the middle one I've just missed there, is try and rein in. If it's yourself making one, rein yourself in. And if you're making something for someone else, rein them in. Because I've had conversations with lecturers who are like, they essentially want to make The Sims and don't realise that I barely have the budget to make this, let alone a virtual environment. Instill into them, the more complicated they make the simulation or the board game, the more complicated it is to teach it to the students, which then again is less likely to take up in the classroom and less likely they're going to engage. I always try, and it's a completely different subject matter, but I always remember it's in the intro to Stephen Hawking's book that he was told that for every equation that he adds, he would likely halve his readership. And I always think in that kind of framework, like the more complicated I make the game, I halve the uptake every time. So that's always something I take on board. And finally, going to the well, compared to other game systems out there. So while you're designing stuff for the classroom, this is where I'm saying, look at Bloom's against your games, look at the gamification taxonomy against your life. Where did they cross over? That is a picture of my games, just slightly far enough out that you can't judge me for some of my bad collection there. Some brilliant stuff in there, but these are the games on the left that have inspired our policing simulation. The top one being Escape the Dark Castle and Dark Sector. If any of you have played that, I imagine you all think it's really good. It's very similar. I would say it's D&D on rails, but in a fantastic way. It's for the classroom and things like that. Having D&D on rails where cards present situations with imposed choices, be it a binary choice or several choices, is fantastic because it takes so much off you as the lecturer, who is going to be assumed to be the DM or the GM of the situation. Not in a collapse. Yes, this is something from Next that is one of the worst pieces of furniture I've had to put together. It looks fantastic. I would never put one together again. But yeah, with Escape the Dark Castle, you have 15 cards. Each card has a situation, and you're working your way to escape a dark castle, or in Dark Sector, it's escape the ship. I believe that's the storyline. But if you strip away castle, spaceship, and just go right down to the mechanics, you've got to pick a person with a role. That could be someone in a law-based role. You could pick someone in a law office. Law-based situations, different people in different professions have different skill sets. They have to all work together to get through a situation. Could be get your way through a case. I think that'd be a fantastic one. Escape the dark courtroom. I think that'd be a really good one that you could do. But really, it's about stripping back to the mechanics. I think I love these meetings. I meet so many good people. One of the things I always think is that we leave too much on top of the layer of what the game is. So people who follow D&D may leave a lot of the Dungeons and Dragons thematics on top. I think we just rip all that away. We don't need to be talking about goblins. We don't need to be talking about dragons. You just look at the mechanics and replace all of that, and you can come out of it the other end. My social work simulator was kind of done like that. I didn't tell them that I'd based it on some game-based stuff till well after the second test with students. So this is actually what it's based on, mainly because I think sometimes as well, apart from present company excluded, it can have negative connotations, and some people will not take to it as well, which is why I use a lot of different terminology when I'm pitching it to lecturers, that we don't use terms like D&D and we don't use role playing. In fact, one of our social work groups, when we had our feedback from them, the word role play came back with very different connotations. They saw role play not as role play games, but their first read of like, oh, I don't like the word role play because it was deemed a sexual term. So we changed it to case study generator, and that's what had a much better uptake from the students when we did that. The other games that on that list, we did Dead of Winter. If you played it, very similar in the terms of having these crossroad decisions that you have to make, as same as Escape the Dark Castle. Alien, Fate and the Nostromo. If you've not played this, I recommend it. It's fantastic. But Fate and the Nostromo has a morale meter that if the morale meets 0, you have lost. That is where we got the idea for the control of the match from. You have a control bar that goes down the side. And Carcassonne, one of the OGs, mainly because of the meeple placement, in which you have meeples that can come back off the board. So if you're building a road and you finish the road, it comes back. If you place a meeple down as a farmer in Carcassonne, it is there for the remainder of the game. So you've got to decide how you're going to deploy your people with that economic constraint. And that comes into the designs for the cards, which if we skip a little bit ahead, these are some of the cards here. We have different designs of cards. So at the moment, on the first iteration, we have the different teams that are coming to play Warrington Wolves. They say who they are, team info, if they're a rival, and who they're a rival of. So you get to see if they are a rival of Warrington Wolves or not. And then we have different cards with different situations that go around the stadium. So things that happen outside the stadium, things that happen at ground level within the stadium. And they have different layers. They have a description of what happens, what you have to do with the game mechanic to satisfy that mechanic, and what to discuss and what you need to do as a police officer. So it has 2 levels of how do you win the game or lose the game or play the game, and what do you need to do and think about as a police officer and discuss with your with the lecturer and with your team around you. You'll notice as well what we have here as well is that, which is kind of like Carcassonne in that some meeples stay on the board and some come back to you, is that the card on the right, once that situation is resolved at half-time or full-time, those policemen come back to your pool to be reused again. The outside the stadium one here, because they have to make an arrest, that officer has to take that person back to the police station, so they are removed from the game. So you are now running on less police officers. You've reduced the amount of police you have at your disposal. But that is the situation that comes up, and that is something that the police officers have to take into account, and genuinely happens. Here is the first mock-up of the board that we have. This is gratuitously stolen imagery off Google Maps at the moment, but we are, now that we've tested it with staff and students, we are going to be creating, getting our graphics team at the university involved in making a proper version of this. But what I was saying here is that we have the north, south, and east, west stands, and the outside the stadium here as well. So you've got 5 areas around the stadium that you have to think about. You'll notice that each one of these stands has a tiny little box next to them. That is where you put your meeples when you decide. You're given 10 police officers at the beginning of the game. How are you going to deploy them around the stadium? Are you going to be quite even? Or are you going to say, well, actually, I know that south and west is home and away. That corner is where the home and away fans meet. Are we going to put more police there to make sure there's no problems? And they sit there. They can only be used for those. So if you put 5 police in south stand and none in the north stand, and things happen in the north stand, you can't move them from anywhere else. You have to think about where you're going to deploy your officers. So there is that fixed element to the game that until half time, when you were allowed to shuffle your pools again, they're locked in place. So if you put not enough at one of the stands or none at one of the stands, thinking you've predicted how this game is going to happen, and then something happens, say in the north stand, like I said, you will just have to lose control and manage that situation until half time or full time when that happens. Down at the bottom, we have a fixed Warrington Wolves that's printed on the board. In the future, we are going to be looking at ones which is a generic stadium with modular sets of different teams. So a set of the rugby cards, there'll be a set of cards made for each of the football leagues. So you can decide on things like that. An opponent card is drawn to the right. The type of game they're going to be playing, is it a friendly match? Is it exhibition? Is it a cup match? How are the crowds? Are they friendly? Are they hostile? Is it tense? Things like that. And then external policing is something that we're going to be adding in the next phase of the game, which is police officers from Warrington Policing Central, which can be used for things outside the stadium. That depends on if there are other events happening in Warrington at the time, which can happen at any situation, whether or not they can be used as additional backup. If I skip forwards, this is a mock-up of how it looks while you're playing. So if we have a look here, we can see that the West Stand has got 4 policemen deployed to it. However, nothing's happened. They didn't put anyone outside the stadium, but 2 things have kicked off. And you can see elsewhere, like East Stand has had something happen, but they've still got police in reserve. This is a really good way of visualizing to lecturers as well, or yourselves or colleagues that you're trying to pitch this to, making this and showing up. This is what I think. This is a game in action. So this is roughly what we've got. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the first event into the second half, and this is what it looks like. The students at this point will be making their decisions, they're writing out their match report, their notes about what they're doing. They're having a back and forth between themselves. They're having a back and forth with the lecturer about the decisions that they're making. Whether or not they need to deploy more people, should they have moved people. This is also the thing as well. It's a brilliant game to roll out where students can fail and fail and fail and learn from that failure before they even get close to making decisions in the real world. And it's fantastic for that. They can fail and torture you and justify why they made the decisions they did, what went wrong, and if they were to do it again, what would they do differently. And it's that brilliant level of experiential learning that you've got there as well. Here are the game rules. We kept it quite simple. Students will pick an opposing team, a game type. Oh, thank you there, Steve. We're getting close to the end anyway. And they will pick the game type and the level of policing that they've got. Deploy the police officers where they choose, depending on the information they have. They pull 1 card at a time every 3 minutes for the first half. Resolve each card. At half time, they write up their notes, decide how they're going to redeploy their police officers again, repeat step 1 again with the second half, 4 event cards, resolve each one as you go, and then present your conclusions and your match reports to the group and to your lecturer. What makes this really good as well and reusable is these are the odds at the moment for each game. So it's 6 quintillion to 1. If you're going to round it down, so the likelihood of students playing the same game twice is exceptionally limited. Also as well, it gives you the option as well with the deck of event cards is that you can curate events for the students, which is what we did. We did half randomized and half curated when we tested it to see the differences between them, which means that you can curate events to see if students pick up on common themes. One that we tried to do was push towards, is there going to be a terrorist attack at the Warrington Stadium, by threading in a few choice cards that alluded to things that were quite suspicious. Quickly go through the technology. I imagine this will be where a lot of the questions come, but we'll go through. Nandeck is the software that drives most of this. If no one knows about this or wants to make card-based games, go grab it now. It is free. The person who designs it is exceptionally open to questions. They run the subreddit on Reddit for Nandeck. If you're not a coder, it's quite easy to pick up. If you're at least familiar with HTML, you'll fly through it. It's brilliant. The software is exceptionally powerful. I'm learning new stuff every week with it when I'm trying stuff. It's absolutely brilliant. And this is how we work with the lecturers. The lecturers don't even see the code. We decide on what's going on the card. So in this case, for this one, there's a title, a description of what happened, an instruction for the game, and an instruction for the discussion. We decided these are the 4 titles of the things you want on every card. So I give them a spreadsheet, and each of the headings of across the top of the columns is those. And I go, right, just fill out the spreadsheet. And when they finish that spreadsheet, that is what you feed into Nandeck, and it ingests it. And if they may have done 1,000 lines on that spreadsheet, and Nandeck will make you the 1,000 cards perfectly formatted on the pages to go to a print unit to be printed on cardstock to be cut out. So if you're not a coder and you know someone who is, they can help with that side. But it makes it exceptionally easy to work with people who aren't coders who still want to work on this kind of project, because they just have to fill in forms essentially to make the cards. It also makes it really easy to make amends if you've got spelling errors or changes to wording, or removing cards in the future and adding ones that are more manageable. This is the code on the left that designs that same card. So 12 lines of code generates me 65 different cards for ground level policing. All centered. These are very basic cards. We've designed a lot nicer things since then. And then it prints it out like this, perfectly centered. Run it through a guillotine, get a corner cutter for the nice corners. And you've got yourself a deck of cards, which I've got here, which have actually got a nice design on the back. So we've got watermarks for each of the departments, so we can make them themed. And then the other part, which is different since last time, is that actually before the students get to play the game, the idea of this, we focus on the game first because we had to wait till Warrington Wolves gave us permission, but we're filming at Warrington Wolves in June and at a live game, and we're going to be doing 360 footage all around the stadium, both when it's empty and when it's full, with the sound recording as well. And the idea is that the students get put in our immersive suites and get to go around the stadium while they sat and soak it in and feel like they're there, as close as you can get there. And then we also have built into Moodle our virtual tour, so they can walk around the stadium again, like Google Street View, so they can make their notes on the stadium to influence their choices and show that they've actually responded to this. So our immersive suite, if you're familiar, if you have one where they are projecting, sometimes it's on the floor and ceiling as well, but they can immerse themselves in a situation with a 360 view all around with sound. These here as well, we've actually designed, well, I designed these. These are actually hooks to hang the 360 camera from awkward situations. So we can put them not just on a tripod, but hanging from a stadium or hanging from a building to get a better shot. And then here you can click play if you want. This will be one. This is our 360 tour. So this is one we made through our crime scene house, where you can actually, kind of like Google Street View or an old school game where you could go from room to room, walk around the stadium, click on items, be given information, and understand more about the layout of the stadium to make that. And this is the way they go through. So this is the day, it's a dayline thing. So they get introduced to the session, they all go in the immersive suites, then they go into their breakout groups and go do the virtual tour and make their notes. And then those same groups play their own individual games based on their experiences. So each of those groups will have a different game and have something else to report to them as well. Testing has been done with staff and students. I'm going to go, so students one, we reduced quite a lot with this, changed different iterations, which is great. Testing it with the students, we made sure the timing was right. And then adjustments that we've done, we're going to be doing additional meeples for stewards for basic things, and also the crowd capacity, like we said. And my favourite thing to say about this is one of the feedback from the students, because it was level 7 we tested it with. They were postgrad students who actually had been in the police force, and one of them had gone, yeah, who actually tested the game said, I've done this. This is pretty good. This is actually pretty much spot on to how it actually happens. Which, apart from all the feedback I can get, that alone is worth its weight in gold to me. If you are interested in Nandek, here is some other stuff that we've done around the university. As you can see, the further along with my game, they get better and better each time. And for accessibility, it's within seconds you can change the font and everything can be in Open Dyslexic, which makes it a hell of a lot easier if you're doing print work and you've got students in your class who you're worried about engaging because of text or heavy text. To change between the two took me about 20 minutes to have one deck in Calibri and one deck in Open Dyslexic, just adjusting the formatting. And there we have it. Thank you very much.